Hello, all you lovely people out there. How are you all doing? I'm Kate Hill, and I am here to give you the best commentary about our property markets. Tina Howes is with me from SmartMove, one of Australia's leading and award-winning mortgage brokers. We are giving you a whole series explaining all things property finance, so stay tuned. Hello everyone, I'm here again with Tina Howes from SmartMove, one of Australia's leading and most award-winning mortgage broking firms. And this time around, Tina has come to ask me for my insights as a qualified property investment advisor about some burning property and property investing questions. So Tina, tell us why we're here. What are you going to ask me today?
I got so much out of our conversation about what makes a good investment.
Thank you.
And I'm really keen to delve further into that and cover off, I guess, what drives growth. I mean, it's the key question, right? That's what everyone wants in property. And, you know, the last couple of years through the pandemic, we've just seen phenomenal growth in property prices. So
yes.
keen to explore that further and really pick your brain.
Yes.
Please.
I'm actually quite glad that you've just mentioned the whole pandemic thing, because I've spent a little bit of time over the past year or so kind of issuing words of caution, if you like, because seemingly every area in Australia went completely gangbusters in terms of property price growth. I think there is definitely room for words of caution, because for the long term, we need to understand what has driven that price growth. And when you come to buy a property or an investment property, you really need to understand whether those growth drivers or that particular growth driver is sustainable long term, right? So I guess if we can assume, and thank you for your lovely comment at the start there. I always get a lot out of our conversations too. But if we can assume, everyone, that you've listened to our chat about what makes a good investment, and you've had some expert advice about areas, property types that are good for you personally, then obviously keep on listening. If you haven't listened to that one yet, go back and listen to that one first before I hit pause on this one and go back and listen to that one. It sounds kind of obvious, but it's absolutely critical to your success as a property buyer, as a property investor, right? It always needs to be in an area that has the best chance of capital growth. I can't stress that enough. And it has the best chance because of demand. People want to live there. And you need to buy the right property type for that area and those local people who live there, right? So the property needs to be in demand because people want to live in your property, right?
Yeah.
So you need to understand what makes an area desirable and desirable long-term, and what makes your property desirable and desirable long-term for the local people who live there, not for you, for the local people who live there, right? Again, it's all about supply and demand, right? So where does the demand come from and why? So back to location. Think about things like infrastructure. So what is being built there and why is it being built, right? So there are infrastructure projects and infrastructure projects. It's not quite the sort of not all of them are created equal. But think about established infrastructure that's there already. It is key to make sure that an area is fit to thrive because of infrastructure that is already there. And the other sign is, and the thing to look out for, which can suggest that an area has potential to grow, is the evidence of future spending on additional local infrastructure projects. So I'm talking about things like schools, hospitals, roads, universities, TAFE campuses. They are all evidence of a growing and thriving population. They are evidence that the local government and the council are preparing for growth from population, from more people. Now, new infrastructure projects create jobs. They create vibrancy. Again, it depends on the project, right? So if you think about, certainly here in Australia, somewhere like Western Sydney, the Penrith area, the Liverpool Council area, even Campbelltown, they are all benefiting from what the single biggest infrastructure project in Australia at the moment, which is the new airport out at Badgerys Creek. There are billions being spent out there on everything that I've just been talking about. Everything.
But clarify this for me. The infrastructure will have a time frame, and eventually the infrastructure will be built. Those jobs will cease. But presumably the infrastructure is being built because the government has some kind of scheme of where the growth in population is going out towards there, and that's why the infrastructure is being built. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes. Again, it will depend on the project, right? So, for example, in Brisbane City, there's a lot of road building going on and tunnel digging, partly in Melbourne as well, also out in Sydney, Western Sydney. Now, it's not just about, it's partly because of a growing population, but it's also from a lifestyle perspective, making people's lives a little bit easier. Okay, so if you're thinking about Moreton Bay, for example, in the north of Brisbane, the infrastructure, one of the major infrastructure projects up there in the last few years was the train line that separated off at Petrie for the new university that was coming in there, and split off that goes over to Redcliffe. Now, yes, there is a growing and thriving population there, but Anzac Avenue that goes, and that curved road down towards and into Brisbane, where a lot of people were working, was absolute gridlock every morning, nightmare traffic. People spent hours in their cars. It's from a lifestyle perspective, not great. So the encouraging and the building and the encouraging of people to use that train line, that makes people's lives a lot more pleasant, right? It makes it easier to live there. So from with our investment hats on, when it's nice to live somewhere because you can get to work easy, if you're working in Brisbane, then that's a big plus. That infrastructure project will create jobs, obviously only for the short term, and will obviously employ conductors and, train people for a length of time. But you're also thinking about it then making that location more desirable to live in. So even though, the construction phase of it is shorter term, in terms of job creation, longer term makes the area more desirable because you're not spending 6 hours a day in traffic trying to get in and out of Brisbane. Right. Yeah.
So how about areas that potentially aren't infrastructure based, but it's simply become unaffordable to live in a certain area? So then people start to look at, the next area that they may have to live in, and it might involve a longer commute. So, for example, the Central Coast and the Wollongongs and the Blue Mountains of this obviously I'm from Sydney. Obviously, each state has its equivalent. How about that kind of growth and location?
Or just to bring it back to infrastructure, those areas will still grow in value, but they tend to be in fits and bursts, if you like. So the Central Coast is actually a fantastic example. So when Sydney has a boom, generally, the lag will follow. The Central Coast will then boom because everybody here in Sydney is going, I'm not spending millions of dollars on a tiny little flat. I'm going to go somewhere.
Get a house.
Afford more, get out of town. But they are going to sit, absolutely, and they do make that sacrifice. I will sit on the train for an hour and a half each way. I will take that into consideration. So, but that is a short-term growth driver. That's not a sustained, that's not Gosford City Council building infrastructure projects that benefit the local community. That is a different growth driver. It's almost, if you like, an extrinsic growth driver. Central Coast, the Blue Mountains, Wollongong's a bit of a different example actually, but the Central Coast and the Blue Mountains will grow in value when Sydney gets too expensive. That's not something that's happening from within the Central Coast that's bringing people in, right? So it's slightly different. So if Gosford City Council do a lot more in terms of those projects and build more, which they're going to have to now because of the exodus from Sydney, they've had to be dragged into the 21st century. Sorry, Gosford City Council, but you're going to have to deal with it now. You've got all these Sydney-siders wanting their good coffee. They're going to have to do those things, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different in terms of growth driver, right? So what I'm talking about is something that is happening in that area because the council is planning ahead, not reacting because, 500,000 Sydney-siders have gone, whoa, I'm out of here, right?
So are there places where you can potentially have both? So whereby you might have
absolutely
moving to Queensland because it all of a sudden is more affordable than Sydney and we're priced out.
Absolutely. Case in point.
Also infrastructure.
Absolutely. So case in point would be the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, would be Ballarat, Bendigo, Geelong, Toowoomba. There are so many good areas that also within the capital cities themselves, it doesn't just have to be a regional, town. Moreton Bay in Brisbane, Ipswich City Council, Logan City Council. Gosh, I could go on forever. There are many, many great areas and councils who are doing a lot of infrastructure building and constructing because of growing populations to make people's work-life balance is better, to improve jobs opportunities for people. Absolutely. That's happening all over the place. Central Coast, not quite there yet. Watch this space. The next one would be industry. Okay. So you need a diverse set of industries. And what I mean by industries are it's the jobs that people have. And what types of jobs do people have, right? So typically you're looking at retail, health, education, manufacturing, those kind of things, the sort of types of industries that people work in.
Mining.
Oh, separate conversation. Nice one. I'll come back to that one. But you need to ensure that there are enough diverse businesses in the location that you're looking to invest so that people are working locally, that they have enough work, that they have enough work locally so that they are less itinerant. They tend not to move around more. They stay put because there's enough work and enough diversity of work so that they will spend their money nearby and locally, and that they stay, their kids go to the school, they progress up the career ladder, they don't have to leave to improve their work life. And diversity is important to ensure in an area is not dependent on one single industry, i.e. mining, or
our industry, manufacturing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, or tourism, right? So that and that the other industries in town don't just exist to support that one particular industry, right? So you need to get to know how are people working, where are they working, what companies are there. If one of those industries, let's say you've got those, you've got the big four, like in tennis, the big four, is this probably the big three now, whatever, that if one of them falls over, there is still enough work for everyone and diverse work for everyone to stay. You don't want them leaving in droves because the car plant is closed down. Or a big power plant is closed, or whatever it is. So tourism towns, and this brings us back to conversation we had previously when you said, what about the holiday, or you go on holiday, should I buy a holiday house here? I would 99% of the time say absolutely not, because that particular town is likely to be a one-horse town in terms of industry. It's going to be tourism, and everything else there supports that industry. So wherever you are in the world, this is applicable, right? So here in Australia, when the Australian dollar is not favorable and we don't have as many tourists come in, or there's a pandemic and we close the entire continent off from the rest of the world, then those kind of towns are going to suffer because there's no tourists. Who's coming?
Yeah.
So it can really, you can really highlight, you might think you're in a diverse and multi-industry town, but when this sort of thing happens, you go, actually, all these other industries support tourism, or all these other industries support that one mining town. Right? Mining towns are particularly risky because of this, because they tend to be in very remote areas. At least with a tourism town, you aren't, you tend to be somewhere close to other civilization, right? It's generally not the disaster that it can be if you own something right in the middle of Queensland where your nearest sheep station is 6-hour drive away.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and I guess a lot of those places that have had that boom because we've had a pandemic and we've been locked in your state or in your country, and therefore the rates are phenomenal for accommodation. Well, the minute we open doors to travel overseas, or the minute your employer says you have to go to the office 4 days a week or 3 days a week, it might be a different situation for the demand and supply in those areas.
Yes, that's right. But my point is, don't rely on that having to happen for you to get a tenant again, right?
Yeah.
Don't take that risk. Why put yourself through that, right? You need to be able to time those things really quickly. And I think COVID, the time between COVID happening, us realizing, oh my gosh, this is serious, to the borders closing, it was a month, right? You don't have time to the timing of your in and out, your entry and exit of that investment, you don't have time to do that kind of thing. Or before you've even realized, gosh, this is going to really impact my investment property, I'm not going to have a tenant, right? So diverse industries, crucial. It segues very nicely, and it is different to the local economy. So, and the reason it's different is that you can have an area that has one industry but is economically very healthy, like mining, right? During a mining boom, the mining towns are economically very healthy. There is jobs growth, the employment rates are high, household income levels are high, regional gross product is good, all those things are increasing. Those indicators are good. But you can also have a town that has many, many industries, but is economically deflated, right? So you want them both. You need diverse industries and you need a very healthy, growing economy. All those indicators you need to check for: unemployment rates, employment rates, right? Gross regional product. All those things are really important, that they are steady, ideally growing. You need to cut everything a bit of slack at the moment because of COVID. But if you're checking these fundamentals and that they're there, generally you would be okay long term, right? And then population. So it's not just how many are there now, but how many are there going to be in the future, population projections, and who are they? So kind of three things, right? So you need to assess population and demographic trends. This is crucial. It can provide that insight into anticipated property demand for your property that you're going to own there. So, and this insight or this knowledge, it can allow you to target areas with really strong and rising populations, right? It gives you a greater pool of prospective tenants, but also buyers, as and when and if you ever needed to sell. It's crucial, right? So, and then the next bit, which is understanding the demographics of that area, which will help identify population shifts. So sometimes you'll have an area that it's all families, but if you're finding that there are more diverse property types coming in terms of more townhouses, more units being built, there are more lone person households or more professional couples coming in, right? You need to understand who those people are. So that you are buying the property type that is in demand from those people, right? You don't, forever saying this, you don't want to be buying a 2-bedroom unit in a place that's full of families with 2 kids and 2 cars, and they all want 4-bedroom houses. You are going to sit vacant forever. You're going to wait for the 4 people who are okay with the unit. You need to appeal to the masses.
I had a client that, went to a fancy seminar probably 15 years ago now and bought the 1-bedroom apartment in an area way, way out of Brisbane, where the infrastructure was coming. It just hadn't arrived yet. And everyone was buying houses and were wanting to live in houses, so had no tenants. And the place didn't go up in value for many, 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 many years.
Yes, right. And
probably a great area, but wrong product.
Yes, possibly. But then that brings us back to point number one. It has to have established infrastructure, right? Now, you can get away with that sometimes on the outer, outskirts of capital cities, again, like here in Sydney or southern Brisbane, Melbourne, anywhere, where there's a lot of new housing being built, but there's just one road in and out. The schools aren't there yet. The facilities aren't there yet. They're all sitting on that one road in and out for half an hour in the morning before they've even got to the rest of civilization, But people will, they'll compromise on that because if they can get their hands on their dream property for a reasonable price, right? So, but when you're investing, the
investor might not have
a bit different. Exactly. It's a bit different, right? So when it comes to then, again, that property, like you said, who's living there? Why are they living there? And where in that location do they want to live? Again, you need to appeal to the masses. Don't buy that 1-bedroom property where everyone's looking at 4-bedroom houses, right? Look at the street, the suburbs, the amenities, the transport options. Don't assume that everyone catches a train like we do in Sydney and Melbourne, right? In Brisbane, far fewer people catch trains. In outer Melbourne, people really don't catch the train. Everybody drives. Parking is way more important than the proximity to train lines, right? So everything comes back to supply and demand, right? So check for local residential development projects. You don't want to be right next to 5,000 brand new homes, and God forbid you've got the 1-bedroom unit, right? So I can talk to you about this for the rest of the afternoon.
It actually sounds quite intimidating that there's so much at play.
Yes,
and I understand why people say, I want to buy something close to home because I know that area and they at least know that. Whereas, sometimes they don't have the budget necessarily to afford to do that. So they end up buying the 1-bedroom or the studio, whatever it may be. But it sounds like they really need to talk to an expert. And I guess that's where you come into play, Kate, right? That's what you and your team do.
Of course it is, love. Yes. And that's kind of, I don't mean to just sort of plug the service, by saying this is really hard, but there is genuinely a lot to consider, right?
Yeah.
And you can, but I will come back to say that the location is key, right? You are more likely, even if you buy a slightly inferior property in a great location, it is still likely to get dragged along by property growth, right? Just by being in a fantastic location with all those, with the infrastructure, with the diverse industry, with all those things that I've said. Whereas if you've bought a fantastic property, but in a really inferior location, you are going to sit there waiting for capital growth for the next 15 years.
Yeah.
And you can have the greatest cash flow in the world, but it's never going to grow in value. Right? So the location is essentially it's key number one to driving actual growth. The property type will also, of course, make a difference, and it will make a difference and ensure that you are more likely to get a quality tenant because you've bought the right property type, which will keep it in demand, which will mean that you can sell it quicker because you've bought what the local people are looking for. That is when it's going to drive your property growth. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that was great, Kate. I just want to send it out to all my clients now.
Well, we'll try and get this podcast and also video. We're doing this as a video as well, out to everyone as soon as possible. You can email us, by the way. So please, you can email me, Kate at adviseable.com.au, and Tina
at smartmove.com.au.
There you go. Any property finance or property investment questions, or any topics that you'd like us to cover, just go for it and let us know what you think. Stay very safe and well, everyone. We'll call it a day for now, because otherwise we will definitely be here for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you so much, Tina. It's always fabulous to see you and be with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Kate.
And we will see you all again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. I really hope that you found all of that useful. Tina is a mind of information. She and I will bring you lots more videos explaining all things property finance. Don't forget to leave us a comment and a question. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also just give us a little like on the video if you are enjoying the free content. And we will see you really soon. Bye.